So I'm going to talk about the evolution of Wi-Fi spectrum analyzers. So I'm going to cover some basic things that you already know, but I'm going to compensate with some cool graphics, so that's fine. This is me. I'm going to say my name in Norwegian, Kjetil Teigen Hansen. Enough about that. Small little picture, not doing a Q&A here. In your head, who do you think is SK1 or SK2? Do not answer, just have it in your brain. Different type of spectrum analyzers. We don't see our spectrum analyzers here, but this is what we usually think of a dedicated spectrum analyzer, the huge box for $100,000. So you have typical signal spectrum analyzers, oscilloscopes, and these small USB ones here. We have SDRs. It's way too many to mention. Do most of the things that our spectrum analyzers do today, but they cover a wider frequency band, are open source. You can use it in all kinds of tools in SDR++. So this Riser here on Twitter shared this picture of how many spec-ants he have after 4 years working with SDR++. Would be cool to use our spec-ants in his tool. And then we have our cute little Wi-Fi spectrum analyzers. What's the difference? Well, it usually only covers our Wi-Fi frequencies, so no sub 1 gigahertz. Usually locked to some software, and so we can't really use it on any other tool. They're usually swept. Some of them are FFT, like the Cognio Sidekick 1 and Sidekick 2. The small USB ones are typical swept analyzers. This is just a reference slide. I can jump past this real quick. This is just my wishes of what I want of an analyzer, so you can read that later. Remember this tool, Cisco Spectrum Expert? Well, it covered most of the things that I want today in our spectrum analyzers. The only thing about this one is a little bit slower. FFT-based, this works similar to Sidekick 1 does today. 156 kilohertz spindle length, 1 sweep per second. If you have the good old cards, you can run it in all kinds of modes. Free span mode does Wi-Fi detection, all these cool things. You just need a really good old laptop with a PCMCIA slot. Channelizer, yes, it supports 4.9 gigahertz to 5170. I used a jammer to create a signal all the way down there, and it actually supports that frequency range, so that was cool. Only thing I didn't like about Channelizer, I can't really tweak the channels in the waterfall, so when I can't do that, I can't see small detected signals there, for example, my radar. But you have the device setting, so I can change all the span, resolution, bandwidth, and dwell time, and you have full control. But maybe it's going to be deprecated, I don't know. Ekahau Spectrum, we all know. I'm just going to compare the spectrum view of it. Don't need to talk much about this. It's really good hardware, but I want more of it, right? So I really just want to pull out all the data and put it in some other software. And I'm going to do something just to do a really short spec-and primer for you. So bear with me. It's a reason why I'm going to talk about this, because this explains the weaknesses and the strength of the typical Wi-Fi spectrum analyzers we use today. Cover some basics here. FFT, what is it? It's used to convert from the frequency domain, from the time domain to the frequency domain. And you have this nice little picture here that shows a bit dark, so maybe you can't see it that well, but you see the time domain of some IQ signals, and it's converted into the frequency domain. Noise floor, let's mention Sam Clemens there. It depends. It really depends on the thermal noise. So I'm thinking even me and Jim Palmer maybe radiate some thermal noise already. But just random electronic noise in every single electronic equipment that you have, measured with so there's the calculation of it. So it really depends now on the resolution bandwidth, of course. Well, you remember from your studies that you up the channel bandwidth, you get 3 dB more noise, and that is dependent on how much thermal noise you're listening from the device. And you can clearly see that using 320, you would expect minus 89 of thermal noise, but you have to take into calculations the noise from the client itself, from the RF. They usually calculate this in something called a noise figure. So if you just remember the number at 160 is minus 92, Here's the iPhone. It's at 160, it's minus 89, because the iPhone 16 Pro Max has approximately 3 dB of noise figure. So it generates 3 dB of excess noise itself. So that's how we typically measure our typical spectrum analyzer using something called DANL, a displayed average noise floor. It just shows how sensitive our spectrum analyzers are. I didn't have a DANL value for Ekahau Sidekick. That's most of us use it, but I do have it from the good old Cognio card. And that is, thank you, some water. From the good old Cognio card, mentioned that they have a DANL of minus 124 dBm. That would mean, with the thermal noise calculations, that it should be around 10 dB noise figure, so it's actually really sensitive. And that is why during my testing, when I used a Cisco 9124 access point, it detects the radar when the Sidekick 1, Sidekick 2, and the DBX can't see the radar at all, because it has a much lower noise floor, usually, so it has a better dynamic range. So it detects it way below the 95 dBm dynamic range that the Sidekick has, for example. But it's pulsating, so after a while I can see it in a typical spectrum analyzer. So that's interesting, because usually when I want to mount some access point, I really want to see if it's radar, so then I would love my tool to be able to go as low as noise floor, like minus 110, to be able to hear it. There comes the dynamic range. I found this one from Ekahau, minus 92. I've seen other slides where they said minus 95, but it simulates the noise of a 20 megahertz of a client. So that's why we're always used to seeing noise floor as minus 94. But being it that the spectrum analyzers usually have a bandwidth that would imply, with my calculation, I think it would imply around 114 dBm, would it imply with the bit length that they use. But I don't know if they do some calculation. This is more noise from the device itself that I'm not sure about. So we have those traditional spectrum analyzers. Yes, I was able to draw that picture with a DBX. It was really slow because I set the step interval to a really low value, and it took a while, but I was able to draw that one with the good old USB one. So that's a pretty neat picture. Traditional ones, they only measure the amplitude of a signal. So even how insanely complex our signals are, you're only measuring the amplitude of it. So we can't do any real demodulation of any interference or any kind of detection, right? Usually we do some, I found out yesterday that Ekahau do sample IQ data for interference classification, etc. So it doesn't just only use pattern recognition that I thought 2 days ago. As IQ data, that's the thing we already know, but I compensated that I said previously with this cool 16 QAM vector graph symbol here. And how would your spectrum analyzer measure the amplitude of that one, right? So it's really complex. The IQ data, that remember is the in-phase and quadrature signal, so it's 90 degrees apart. And we modulate the phase and amplitude of the signal to create really complex signals. And real-time analyzers like the one I have here and other high-end spectrum analyzers can demodulate it, so we can see if it's a QAM 16, it's Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, decode camera, baby cams, etc. And that means if the Ekahau Sidekick samples IQ and we had an IQ output of it, we should be able to get some IQ from that as well. And everyone that did have, I think everyone of a certain age maybe remember the heterodyne receiver. Everyone had it, a typical AM FM radio, tune the dial. You have an RF input, a mixer, local oscillator, and an intermediate frequency. The mixer is used to mix the input signal with the local oscillator and to create an intermediate frequency by down-converting the signal. A little bit complex. So what it just means that there is no moving parts inside typically our spectrum analyzer. There's nothing moving. we have an IF at the lower end frequency because that is easier to work with than higher end frequencies. So then we're taking the signal by combining a signal from the local oscillator that we create ourselves with the RF signal, and some examples there. And by doing that, we convert the signal and move it to the intermediate frequency. So whenever you tune your dial on the radio, that's the same thing we do with the local oscillator. We just tune it so we have the frequency past the filter. So that's how our DBX and Oscium cards work, for example. And inside the IF, we have, at the frequency center, we have the RBW filter. So that's where we see the RBW. And after all this, the signal has been filtered and computed, we get what we see as a bin. So if you open any spectrometer files, you usually see every bin or point in time is measured in either a bin or a resolution bandwidth, but it's basically the same thing. The length of a bin is a resolution bandwidth. And regarding the lower the noise floor and lower the noise, so if you see from RBW of 156 kilohertz, so just to show what happens when you move it down to 78, I'm just using some known frequency, and you see it just lowers the frequency range. So that is why, I mean, it really depends on your spectrometer how the noise floor is. For example, when I scan Wi-Fi with this one I have here, I can have the noise floor as minus 120, right? So it just really, really depends. And also to mention, like usually for ease of use, our the Wi-Fi spectrometer, usually everything is just locked. You can't do any changes or check any do any steps changes or do anything to change the device itself. Well, in MetaGeek you can have full control, and I really love that you can do it. And have this short little demo here as well to show what happens when we move the resolution bandwidth. More helpful to visualize it. And the higher the resolution bandwidth, you hide the signals, right? So when we see some signals in Unit 3 and we think, okay, that's interesting, we see it as one pure sine wave. Maybe it's 5 signals or 8 signals, what we know, right? I've seen some of my testing, some kind of intermodulation when using high channels, that I see a 500 hertz signal, 30 megahertz away from the center of the 20 beacon channel. So I can see if I can show that demo. And to explain swept and buckets, I sat PowerPoint, tried to make an animation for 2 days. I gave up, so I drew it instead. So to help visualize how bins work in a swept spectrometer, let's see, I have 2.4 to 2.5 gigahertz here. And you divide it into bins of some certain size. And what is in a bin, right? You have some frequency that's always moving, but you need to have some sort of detection. So that's how we use some sort of detection modes. And you have many different ones: sample, average, peak plus, neg peak, for example. So let's say you wanted to measure the amplitude. You can only measure 1 point in each bin. So let's say using plus peak, you will hide the smaller signal in this bin. So that will be the point that it will show on the video on your spectrum analyzer. So that, let's say you had the swept one, and then it swept, and it covered these bins, and then it draws a picture. So I'm going to show again from 241 to 242. So I'm thinking now we just make some, let's say this is Bluetooth signals that's jumping back and forth. And looking at this is a broad picture in your spectrum analyzer. What will it draw, depending on how wide your resolution bandwidth is. Here are the bins. Those are, of course, really wide. And I see this video, I should have sped it up at least 4 times, but I can speak around it. And then here I'm showing what the spectrum analyzer will do. It will select the highest peak value inside each bin. So all these other small things will be hidden, and some of them will be twice as big. So what happens if you divide the resolution bandwidth in 2? So 2x, twice the resolution bandwidth. Then you have more bins. And then suddenly now you can maybe differentiate those 2 signals there a little bit more, because one of them will be high and the other one will be a little bit lower. So then you can differentiate two signals there. And also USB spec ends, small ones, has to skip to cover the entire frequency band because there's so much to cover. So maybe it skips every other bin. So if you're really unlucky, you'll end up hiding absolutely everything. So you just be a flat curve. I can prove that by showing typical Wi-Fi spectrum analyzers. As mentioned, you can change the settings there. So I have two small demos. Oh, that's the wrong one there. Does it play? If it doesn't play, then I need to play it there. Sorry. It doesn't want to play at all. Oh, that's boring. Da går vi her. There. Sorry. Creating a sine wave here on the DBX. Hopefully we can see it. I wasn't able to. That's why I love, if you have the ability to change the colors of absolutely everything, making the lines thicker, I would love that from a spec and tool. So I'm moving the frequency a little bit to the right, and you can see two signals popping up. So if I could just calculate the step interval, and I move it a little bit further. So I'm doing that. See, I have 3 megahertz apart, so I set it to, let's see, 5, I think now. Yeah. Now it disappears. So if you really can calculate some monitoring something, you can just put like a lot of spikes like in exactly between. But you see you can change it below. You have full device settings. So here I did it again. So it looks my slide in reverse. I can do this. This is how cool the DBX is. I changed the span from 1.6 megahertz and set the step interval really low. And here I'm just doing the same demo back and forth with the signal. So you can see it almost in real time with that one. There. Talking about swept, you have the FFT spectralizer. What's the difference? The main difference of a FFT spectralizer, instead of using the swept function with an IF to sweep the filter, sweep the spectrum across the filter, you now use a sample. You use a 2080 40 megahertz wideband filter to sample one chunk at the same time, and you do FFT of that chunk and divide it into bins for doing FFT and have an amplitude detection in each of those bins. Cognio cards is an FFT analyzer. Sidekick 1 and Sidekick 2 is also an FFT analyzer. So Sidekick 1 captures a 20 megahertz chunk and divides it into bins of 78 kilohertz. Sidekick 2 does 80 megahertz at the same time and divides it into bins of 39 kilohertz resolution bandwidth. And it stitches those together. So we see in that picture here that you won't be able to demodulate because it's not real time, because it samples one, goes to the next sample one. It needs to be stationary to be able to demodulate. Yeah, just a picture that you have some to reference how it will look, there. And now a little, shortly, nice demo how Ekahau will do it. Because it has a sample in each bin, every single bin, then it's not skipping anything. So now I can move this filter back and forth, and we'll see it practically in real time that moves and creates a detection point. So I can draw a cute little picture here if I had more time down in the waterfall. Yeah, I'm not getting you dizzy here, kids. So. And then they have a real-time spec and the little difference here, and then it's instead of doing like skipping, it captures a filter and doing in parallel, it's doing some calculations on the previous frame at the same time. It's doing it with 50% overlap. So with a typical real-time spec and you're able to pull out the IQ, you pull out the phase information of everything, so you're able to demodulate it. And for even though with Cognio and Sidekick does do samples in IQ, we don't have an IQ output to pull out the IQ information. Modern spectrum analyzer for reference. Okay, a fun demo. Matt, be ready. I have a heart here on purpose. I hope this is the right demo, showing the quality of some of the spectralizers. And I'm sending a signal here. And it's a different kind of signal. But it's just showing the quality that you can actually match a picture to show up in a waterfall. Even though it's a competitor logo, it actually it detected this interference. So that's fun. But it just shows it's easier to explain the quality of some spectrum analyzers by using a PNG file. Of course, I tried with a picture of a person, but it was really impossible. And then just demo it further to see what happens if you look at it in the survey file. It's compressed for obvious reasons. I did some testing with Ben yesterday, and I think I have 46 gigabytes of swept files. So if you had the same quality and the survey file, your file would be gigabytes, right? So, but take that into accounting. That usually just use, live mode looks really good. There's some reference about Sidekick 2. That's the FFT spectrometer, 39 kilohertz bin length, 45 sweeps a second. Same bin size in AI Pro and Analyzer on the iPad, but there's some bugs that should be fixed that I found yesterday. So here are AR Pro, Survey, and iPad. The iPad should be fixed, but you see it missing every bin, but that should be fixed. But if you do this really quick on the screen, you see the graphics gets really, really good. Sidekick 1, also an FFT analyzer. Same thing. Here, for some reason, the iPad version looks insanely good. So that just shows the analyzer. There's nothing wrong with the device itself. It's just the analyzer app needs some updates. But that's the thing with the happen testing. You find some bugs, but quality-wise, even though it's a logo, and I don't know if I have a heart there, so don't blame me. Yeah. Sidekick 2 also be careful. This happens to this one all the time. So I need a bandpass limiter. I was testing some throughput, and I placed my antenna on my computer on the back side of the Sidekick. So just mentioning, if you see this, it's just because you have your phone too close when you serve it. Don't have your phone here and your Sidekick on top of it. Antennas shouldn't kiss. So have the antenna mobile on the other side. And then some short 6-minute demos to show how some cool fun demos about this one. So here, I don't need this one now. Here, my PlayStation 4 to my kid was downloading War Thunder. It's no ad, but this is a full record, and this is what happened. For some weird reason, I have problems with the cat feeder. I couldn't access it to give food to my cat because it was on channel 6, because the PlayStation 4 was killing the channel completely. And you see the Bluetooth is really smart. We don't want to go here, we just skip it. And this is compressed, but even in real time, okay, beware it goes real quick, that is in real time. There's almost no space, there's no frames left in here, right? So that's PlayStation 4 downloading, so I should use some QS, maybe. And then we have another fun demo. So we're talking a little bit about MLO now, so maybe do one where I show MLO with Qualcomm. The only one that does some dual radio MLO. Just look at 5 gigahertz. I have 5 or 6 kids playing Minecraft and watching Netflix or Roblox or whatever. And I do my testing underneath. So there's some traffic on 5 gigahertz, and I'm trying to get my iPerf to start on 6 gigahertz. And it's compressed, so you don't see it as fast as possible. And just wait when MLO triggers. There. 320, nope. We do 160 and 80. There. The funny thing that happened then, my kids screamed, "Dad!" But they were thrown out of Roblox because it didn't work. So when I did this. So it seems like it doesn't care at all if it reports high utilization on the 5 GHz. I was able to know iPer from 5 GHz and had the utilization up to 70%. I don't have the demo here, and the Qualcomm just did this instead, like shut down that channel. I have another fun little one here. That is, I saw this with Sidekick 2. I saw this with multiple vendors. That, for some weird reason, I thought there was something wrong with this one, but I saw it in other ones as well. When you get a perfect little intermodulation signal here, only when using 80 megahertz or 160, it disappears at 20 and 40. But when I use 80, 160, you're ending up with this weird intermodulation. So I thought maybe something wrong with this one. I used another spectrometer, saw the same thing. Used the Sidekick 1, saw the same thing. Used the Sidekick 2, saw the same thing. Why? Well, I don't know. That's why we buy expensive stuff to test things. And for the last demo, I want to ask you, okay, do not use jammers. I can record a file here, right? And I can send it to you, I can send it to Profile, I can send it to software, and you can use it at home to demo how it looks. So I thought, just for funsies, so this is the network now live. So if I record WLPC shared, I think, and then I record, okay, do whatever you want on the network. How many probes and how awful can we get this view to be? File is soon 1 gigabyte. That is why we don't get the full speed in Sidekick, for example. It's really fast, real good. But now I'm at 1 gigabyte. Think if you walk a survey for 5 hours, you will hack at 2 terabytes of spectrum files. Yeah, so this looks bad. You do have reason for seeing something Unit 2B is because I don't use a bandpass filter here. So it could be some noise from other frequencies below that overloads the device. So you see some weird things popping up on Unit 2B if nobody has some sort of jamming thing, etc. But that was interesting. And you can see that how fast it sweeps. This is the fastest sweep it supports. So now it doesn't look so bad anymore, right? It looks fairly good. So this file is recorded now. I will share it to you, a link to you, and how to download the software with all the profiles. And then you can look at this self, change the colors, do some analyzing, and see how you can show customers how a hectic Wi-Fi environment can look like. So I'm stopping this now. Yeah, I think that's it. That's it for me. So hopefully, ready for some coffee?